Rasheen lived here at the state-run Bernard Feinstein Developmental Center in Queens.
The medical examiner says he suffered injuries that caused his death. When Richard Luke identified the body, he says the mouth was distorted and bloody.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming. I'm Assemblyman David Weprin, representing the 24th Assembly District in Queens County, and I'm also chair of the New York State Assembly Task Force on People with Disabilities. We're here today to talk about the tragic death of Rasheen Rose, as well as legislation that I'll introduce shortly in January when we go back for the legislative session, designed to prevent these type of tragedies in the future. We have Shanice Loop, who's Rasheen Rose's sister, with us, along with many advocates for Rasheen, as well as for legislation to prevent these type of tragedies in the future. So we're on the same page. Rasheen Rose was a nonverbal, autistic young man who was a resident of the Bernard Feinstein Development Center, which is located in my Assembly District in Eastern Queens. Rasheen Rose was killed when staff at the Bernard Feinstein facility used unlawful restraint, in our opinion, that asphyxiated the young man. The death was labeled a homicide by the Queens DA, even though no one has been prosecuted for Rasheen's death. Rasheen's death was an avoidable tragedy, one that shed light on the changes that must be made. As an elected official, I am outraged that such negligence and incompetence took the life of an innocent young man. Rasheen's family trusted the development center with his care and well-being, only to have that trust shattered by his death. To prevent such tragedies from occurring in the future, I am introducing legislation in the upcoming session that would require the following. 1, require care providers to notify next of kin in the event of any injury or, God forbid, death within 24 hours of the incident. 2, require surveillance cameras in common areas such as hallways, activity rooms, so that recordings may be reviewed by the appropriate authorities in case of an investigation, and also serve as a deterrent for sloppy or incompetent treatment. 3, strengthen the criteria upon which staff training is assessed. Currently, New York State mental hygiene law requires that development centers receive unannounced inspections every 3 months. More must be done to ensure that poorly trained and incompetent staff do not slip through the cracks and harm the individuals with whose well-being the staff are charged. We also need more enforcement of those unannounced inspections, because we believe that they are not occurring as they should be according to existing law. The law is clear in mandating strict staff inspections, so it is necessary for the state to enforce these standards. Our legislation, in cases of injury or abuse, would require personnel to report the incident to the OPWDD. Any and all instances in which the development centers and other such long-term care facilities for the developmentally disabled fail to comply with laws and regulations shall be referred in writing to the New York State Attorney General. Any potential investigation will be at the discretion of the Attorney General. Once the legislative session begins in January, just a matter of weeks, I will make this legislation a top priority.
We are greatly appreciative of the Assemblyman's courage to come forward and to take steps to ensure the safety of those who are most fragile in our society, those who have developmental disabilities, those who have autism, those who are in our homes, state-run facilities, and the like, and need the assistance of government to be able to live a full and prosperous life. Unfortunately, in the case of Rasheen Rose, he was not afforded that opportunity. His life, his world was cut down 2 years ago when he was killed by in a state-run facility by an individual that was supposed to be there, multiple individuals that were supposed to be there as caretakers of Rasheen. That was a very unfortunate, tragic, horrible, awful set of circumstances that caused the death of Rasheen Rose. His family is still grieving. However, on top of all of this, on top of the grieving, on top of the tragedy, what's made matters worse, not only for the family, not only for the activists, but for anybody in New York State who faces the problem of having a disabled individual in their family, they see that New York State has not responded appropriately. Now, what Assemblyman Weprin has done is he has taken assertive, aggressive steps to help prevent this. But this goes a little further than that. There's a case that is pending against New York State for the death, and justice has not been done yet. Justice has not been served. Not only has the Queens County District Attorney turned his back on prosecuting for the death of Rasheen, but also we see that justice isn't served in that New York State has not come to terms with the family, with the grieving family. New York State has not permitted the family to have closure on this case. This case continues against the state for the death, for the wrongful death of Rasheen Rose, and it is outrageous that we still stand here over 2 years later and we have no closure for the family.
The state of New York has an obligation to protect its citizens, and the special needs community needs that protection more than anyone else. The state has failed that duty to Rasheen Rose and the Rose family by allowing him to die in one of the state-run facilities.
To this day, nobody has been held accountable for this horrific tragedy, and we have still not seen an adequate response nor systemic improvements to the system designed to oversee the care for special needs citizens, which is the New York State Office for People with Developmental Disabilities, known as OPWDD. In the incident of Rasheen Rose, he was restrained by a staff member in a dangerous position that is explicitly forbidden by New York State regulations. While other staff members watched and failed to come to his aid, he suffocated and he died. While there's no question that it can be extremely challenging to care for the developmentally disabled, the problems in the New York City system are especially troubling, given that our state spends $10 billion a year caring for the developmentally disabled, more than California, Texas, Florida, and Illinois combined, while providing services to fewer than half as many people as those states do. Our New York State system needs significant reform.
One death of this type is more than we should sustain. And I fully support Assemblyman Weprin and thank him for the legislation he's about to put forth to prevent this from happening again.
My name is Robert Santoriella, and I, along with my partner, Aaron DePass, are counsel for the Luke family in all matters related to the wrongful death of their dearly departed and beloved family member, Rasheen Rose. Mr. DePass and I, along with Ms. Luke, who's joined here today by her husband, would like to express our sincerest gratitude for all of you who came out on a chilly Sunday afternoon to stand here with us on the steps of City Hall. We thank you not only for your support of Assemblyman Weprin's proposed legislation, which seeks to effectuate desperately needed protections for New York's most vulnerable citizens, but also we thank you for your support of Rasheen.
The best way to judge a society is to watch how they treat the least among them. And by least, they meant the most vulnerable. That is still true today. We are gathered here today because our most vulnerable members of our society need our help. If there were cameras in these facilities, things would be so different. We believe that not only would OPWDD take responsibility if something like this were to happen again, but more importantly, we believe that with cameras watching over the residents, the likelihood of something like this happening again is greatly diminished. How we care for and protect our disabled citizens is the compass by which we determine our humanity. So again, the family of Rasheen Rose is asking that you will support Assemblyman Weprin and his efforts to make sure that we properly care for our most vulnerable New Yorkers. Thank you.